Good evening, everyone. I'm Arindam Bandyopadhyay, Dean of the College of Management at UMass Boston. Welcome to our event, Serving Up Conversation. For those of you in our audience, you can see and hear us, but we can't see or hear you. Typically, we'd have this event in person, and I look forward to the day when I can see you all on campus again. But in the meantime, we are so grateful for technology and the ability to gather safely from our homes. We are thrilled to have alumni leaders in the restaurant industry with us tonight. I'll give a brief introduction of the participants and then turn it over to them for the conversation. We have with us Kevin Harron, co-founder, president, and CEO of Burton's Grill. Good evening, Kevin.
Evening.
Patrick Rena, Double Beacon and Chief Financial Officer of Anthony's Coal Fired Pizza. Good to see you again, Patrick.
Good evening.
Amir Shiranian, President of Amelia's Taqueria. Amir, good evening.
Good evening.
And Kelly Walsh, Area Director of Reef Kitchens and co-owner of Big Heart Hospitality. Kelly also serves as a mentor in our Women Beacons of Business program. Kelly, thank you for everything that you do. On behalf of all the students, faculty, staff, and our fellow alumni, thank you all. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We are so proud of the work that you are doing and are grateful that you joined us tonight to share some knowledge with the UMass Boston community. I'm going to turn off my camera and turn it over to Kelly Walsh to kick off the program. Have a great evening.
Thank you, Dean Bando, and hello to my fellow panelists. We're very excited to come together for this event. Thank you to the College of Management and the Office of Alumni Engagement for inviting us and putting this event together. We have about an hour for you. Our audience members have asked lots of great questions. We've seen all your questions and we'll do our best to touch upon those topics you've inquired about throughout our conversation tonight. So first, let's do some introductions, where we work, our background, and how we got into this crazy industry. So I'll start. My name is Kelly Walsh. I grew up on the South Shore here in Massachusetts. Grew up around food, probably like a lot of people do, you know, their moms, grandmothers, and my dad's cooking, and gardening, you know, lots of things, family events around food. It was just a big part of my life growing up. So naturally, my first jobs were in restaurants, bussing tables, making salads, doing anything I could to be helpful at, you know, the ripe age of 14 and a half, I think. And then, so I went to culinary school right out of high school. I cooked for about 5-6 years after that, and then decided I wanted to get more into the front of house side of things, learn more about the business and the operations. So I started doing that. Then I ended up going back to school, came to UMass, got my management degree, and had an incredible experience there with all the professors. Got out of UMass, I took a job with Shake Shack as their general manager here in Massachusetts. And just kind of worked my way through that company. And then my wife and I started the restaurant company, Big Heart Hospitality. So we opened Sweet Cheeks in 2011, Tiger Mama in 2015, Fool's Errand in 2018, and then Orfano in 2019. So those are still, you know, they're a little bit in hibernation right now, but they're still around, and it's just been an interesting year. So Kevin, I'll kick it off to you, and please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, Kelly. I was, I think, at UMass Boston the third semester that it was open. I always want to tell people my claim to fame was it was $250 a semester to go to school there. Terrific value, still is, but a little less expensive when I did it. Been in the restaurant business pretty much my entire working life, 40 plus years, public and private companies. I've been everything from a dishwasher to currently a CEO, as well as a partner in a restaurant with my son, who is chosen to go into business as well. And looking for the retirement, but yet pandemic kind of put a little bit of a halt on that. But I'm hoping that sometime shortly afterwards that I can semi-officially hang up the cleats and pass the torch to someone else. But it's been restaurant business has been very, very good to me. It's been a terrific run, and we're still excited. I'm still excited about it, but it's been certainly a challenge.
Patrick?
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. So similar, I grew up in the business. I was born in New York City and moved to Nashville when I was 5. My family moved. And shortly after moving there, my parents opened up their first restaurant, and was a small Italian place in downtown Nashville. And briefly after that, opened the second one. So I grew up, as a young kid, washing dishes and bussing tables and prep cooking, really doing whatever I could to help my parents out, because I saw how tough it was for them to support the family while working day and night in the restaurant. In high school, I got interested in accounting and decided to pursue that degree up in New Hampshire at Franklin Pierce and not go in the restaurant industry. So I thought. And I got out of school and I started working for a Chili's franchisee in Randolph, Massachusetts. And we had about 47 locations, two separate concepts. And I did that for about 4 or 5 years. And then I've had the fortune to work for 4 or 5 different brands since then. I worked for about 8 years before going back to school to get my MBA. Had the pleasure of being a student in one of Dean Vando's class. And then went back in 2009 and went back for another year and got my master's in accounting. So 5 years ago, I started with Wahlburgers, and I was actually with Wahlburgers when the pandemic hit. So my experience at the beginning of the pandemic was with a different company that I'm with now. 2 months ago, I started with a concept called Anthony's Coal-Fired Pizza, based in Fort Lauderdale. We have 60 locations in 8 states. And I just say about this industry is, if you grow up in it, like everybody you'll hear is, you just have passion for it. It's in your blood, and no matter how tough things are, you never leave. And as Kevin can attest, his son is now in the business as well. So happy to share my history and whatever I can to answer some of the questions that have been asked.
Awesome. Thanks, Patrick. Amir, you're up.
Okay. My name is Amir Shiranian, and I moved to Boston in 1984 at age 17. And then I graduated from UMass Boston in 1992. I studied finance, and for a few years, just about 5 years actually, I worked in retail industry, specifically in home furnishing and rugs. And I worked as a salesman, then as a manager of a liquidation company. So I traveled all over the United States and lived in many different states, New York, Georgia, running liquidation companies. In 1997, I opened my first rug company in Providence, Rhode Island, called Boston Rug Company. And then in 1999, I opened Persian Gallery in Back Bay. In 2004, I opened another company called Medallion Gallery, which I had it operated since then till now. That is an online business. My experience in the food industry actually happened maybe by accident, but something that I wanted to do. So I started the restaurant business in 2013 by opening the first Amelia's Taqueria in Austin, Brighton. And currently we have 4 locations. Probably I have less experience than anyone else in this industry as far as coming from the background or sort of family roots. So that's where I have been.
Awesome. Thanks, Amir.
You're welcome.
All right. So obviously the most relevant topic right now is the pandemic and how, especially for this industry, how everybody is faring. I'm sure our audience is interested in hearing how we handle everything and how we're going to keep people safe through the winter while also serving them at our restaurants. Kevin, can you tell us a little bit about what Burton's is going through and how you guys have had to pivot in this situation?
Sure, Kelly. I'm going to tell you a little story that I didn't share with all of you when we were on the kind of warm-up call earlier in this week. But when the pandemic started, there was no playbook for anybody to respond to this. You could go back to other recessions or other, catastrophes, 9/11, but clearly this was unprecedented. On a business note for my company, both with Burton's Grill, Ready Tavern, and with the partnership I had with my son, our business ground to a halt. The cash register rang one day, the next day it didn't ring. And there was this, besides the fear, for me, what was happening is that for the previous 2 years, we had been working on an exit strategy for our company. And I was about 2 weeks away from signing a purchase and sale to sell the firm to a private equity group out in New York City. That was a culmination of 15 years worth of work. We had 22 restaurants, and suddenly that just blew up right in our face. Our sales were terrific. We were about a $98 million company. We had same-store sales positive for 3+ years, and it was devastating. We really, besides people in my organization saying, Kevin, what we do, I also had to listen to the more personal question is, Dad, what are we going to do? And at that moment in time, I really didn't want my job. And I just, as you mentally regroup, we decided to pull the people together and said, okay, we need a plan for this. Number one was safety of our employees and our guests. And of course, we didn't have any inside restaurant dining, and we were shifting to a takeout model that our restaurants really weren't designed and built for. It's the same business, but it's really not. You don't serve food on a plate. You put it in a box. It can go in a taxi cab and go in an Uber. It's a real challenging business to make it just as good as it is in-house. We shifted to takeout only. We had people attempting to come into the restaurant and place orders. We finally went to a curbside only, which was another element of the business. It was a real challenge. Unfortunately, it was a very painful moment when we furloughed about 1,250 employees. We looked around and we said, how much cash do we have in the bank? And we said, we better stop paying people. And that's not a good thing either. There was a decision I made early on in the start of the company that I'm proud of, and I was very glad that we made it. We never paid people on the terms they gave us. We paid all our vendors every week. So we really had no aging, we didn't owe nearly as much money as a lot of people did because we were basically current within a week on almost all our vendors, with the exception of landlords. When this hit in March 16th, one of the first things we had to do is tell landlords we weren't paying. One of the first things they started to do is threaten us all with default. We said, yeah, good luck with that. And so we're trying to just figure out where all the hits are coming from. One of the things, unfortunately, I had to do when I realized that this may be a long road is I hired a bankruptcy attorney. Now, keep in mind, I just went from a $100 million company to basically nothing to trying to build it back out of the mess that was made. And I couldn't see a way out because I also had 4 additional leases signed for new properties at the end of 2020 and the beginning of 2021. Each one probably costing between $2 and $2.5 million to construct. So things weren't good. Probably the next thing I did is pray for the PPP. The PPP came along. I never knew what PPP was until PPP came. And it was my new best friend, except it didn't work. The original form of the PPP was a 8-week window where you had to keep people employed, and we couldn't even open our restaurants to bring our employees back. Fortunately, that changed. We took advantage of it both in our Burton's business, and my son did it in his business, and it saved our businesses in both particular cases. Internally, it was my job to keep people very focused, to over communicate. We would have, in the beginning, daily phone calls with our leadership team, who would disseminate information back to the field in various ways. We tried to educate. We tried to think about what's going to happen next. And one of my beliefs all along, and when this started, and I think part of it is just the fact that I've been doing this a long time, is I didn't think that this was going to be any less than 24 months, and it was going to be much longer than that potentially, as the residual damage to the economy takes effect and then needs time to rebound. Here we are now, 8 months into it. I still have my eyes set on April of 2021, and it's always been my target is, to try to tell my team, look, you get to that point that we have enough money to keep paying you, keep paying the bills, keep paying the vendors. Then I think there's real cause for optimism. But let's not stray. It's critical that we continue to communicate, that we have to adjust. It's real important to thank our staff, the ones that came back, and as most of you know, it was very difficult to get people to come back to work for a period of time. It's still an issue because the perception in a lot of industries is that the restaurants are unsafe. And unfortunately, what's happened to us right now is that we don't have outbreaks. What's happening is our employees are bringing the COVID to us. We've had to close 4 restaurants, lost tens of thousands of dollars in revenue. Employees have lost revenue because it was brought into the business fortunately, because of our disciplines and masks and hand washing, there hasn't been spread within the restaurant, but you still have to follow protocol. And protocol is broken down. It started to break down with different health departments. They all are, some of them are overwhelmed. Some of them have kind of, I think, thrown up their hands and just said, do what you can. Others have been very helpful, but it's no one's to blame. It's just been so overwhelming and so difficult. And we just need to obviously hope that we can continue to contain this. And we've turned our efforts to our employees to communicate with them on a regular basis. Particularly now, we know we're dreading the day after Thanksgiving because of our fear that they will get together with family and friends, expose themselves, and come in and do more damage to the business. We're very concerned. We've pretty much looked at, typically in the restaurant industry, the holiday seasons is a wonderful time for us. We do gift card sales and we do parties, and people come after office and celebrate and shop and drink, and it's all gone. The hit that we're taking, as I said, continues to be there for us, and we've got to figure out and maintain enough revenue and cash to get through this. And that's where, again, springtime, and I hope it's sooner. And there's, the talk of the vaccines, and we all know that realistically it takes a long time to get that stuff in place. But you got to plan for the end as well. And hopefully, in the case of the businesses that I'm involved with disciplines and good fortune and luck. And one of the things in the Northeast that we need to recognize we've been very fortunate with is incredible weather through all of this that allowed us to serve people in parking lots. Some of the setups that I've seen have been just amazing, amazingly bad as well. And people are just happy to be out there, to have a meal away from home, to feel a sense of normalcy. So the challenge is just to continue to get through this. But I thought I'd share that because for the people in my organization that were there for the entire, and my partners for the entire 15 years, we've worked really hard to put the money back into the business and came so close to finding an exit strategy that not only would have been good for the company, but help us with revenue for additional growth, expansion up and down the East Coast and wherever else we chose to go. And the world just changed dramatically. And I know my story, compared to what a lot of people have experienced, is relatively good. And I certainly know that as long as I continue to stay in this business, not just keep the company going, but to try to be there for people, to support them and help them, because it really is a very tragic, very sad occasion. But through all of this, you have to maintain your optimism, and we certainly have. And I hope the folks out there in the audience stay safe, stay positive, and behave well. So I just thought maybe to share a real world story with you of what happened to the company, and also on a personal basis, one of the things that when my son came to me and said, "Well, what do I do, Dad, with all of this?" I said, "I want you to show up every single day when you stick the key in the lock, know exactly what it costs you to open that business, because you have variable costs and you have fixed costs. So if you know that turning the key costs you $4,000 a day, well, that's your baseline. That's where you start. And then you've got to figure out how you generate revenue so that you can pay yourself." And it's so much different than being an employee who collects a paycheck. And of course, they were also victims as well. So that's my little story. Kelly, if I went off script, sorry.
It'll be all right. I appreciate your candidness and openness. And I think some of those rules of thumb, that we all learn along the way are really important, like knowing, what does it take to open the door every day. So let's move on. Amir, one of the most popular questions that the audience asked was advice that you have for students that are interested in starting their own business, being entrepreneurs. And I'm also interested in all of us talking about some of the more entrepreneurial, creative things that you've seen people do throughout the pandemic to generate revenue, to save money, the outdoor setups. I'd love to hear some of those.
Sure. First of all, I start my time with reading a poem that had become my slogan from the day one when I wanted to start a business. In fact, I read this in my last class in business management that I had in UMass Boston. The topic was what we want to do after we graduate from school. So I said that I'd like to open up a rug business and I'd like to have X amount of employees and all that. So I read this poem that I had read it somewhere, actually at Babson College. I used to go there at the library and study. And it says that chew more than you can chew, then chew it. Plan for more than you can do, then do it. Hitch your wagon to a star, keep your seat, and there you are. So that became my slogan from day one when I graduated from college. And, I always tell everyone that, the time is very valuable. And that's the only thing you have. There is nothing else matters. And you have to plan and you have to execute. If you plan without any execution, it means nothing. You have to plan and you have to execute. So this is how I started. When I started my business in 2008, we had a recession. I was in rug business, as I said, in Back Bay, and it was a luxury business. I realized that the recession has hit and we are losing money. So I said, well, I need to have a business that has a cash flow. I need to start something else. So what am I going to do? I thought of, restaurant business. There is cash flow in it. It's not like carpets that cost like $10, $20, $30,000, and it's not like everyday sale. So I started my research. I went to South America, and I also looked at many other businesses. I had to, with the restaurant business, I had to plan it. And, I looked at many other models like Chipotle and many other Mexican restaurants, and I realized that Chipotle has gone from one location to 1,200 locations. So I said that, I'm going to travel and look at many other places that they are, same model. And then once I felt comfortable in 2013, I started the business, and I opened the first location. And for me, it was quite a challenge, but I knew how to manage the business and how to manage the people. I had little knowledge about the kitchen, but I read and I looked at different things. So I started designing my menu and knowing what we're gonna have in that menu. And the concept was to open up taquerias by universities. So my main clients were and are students and all academics. And it was important for me to serve good quality, fresh, and also inexpensive, so all the students can afford it. This way, within a year and a half, we opened our second location by Northeastern University, the third one, another year and a half by Boston College, and the fourth one we opened in 2019 by Berklee College of Music, corner of Boylston and Mass Ave. So just imagine, with this concept, and then suddenly pandemic happened, and all the universities, all of a sudden, March 23rd, all the universities shut down. So pretty much we lost maybe about 90% of our business. 90% of our sale was gone overnight. And at that time, I had 81 employees, so it was a very difficult decision how we can basically afford, paying salary when there is no business. So I contacted the unemployment office. There is a branch called Quick Response. So the first thing for me was to make sure that all the employees, having bread and butter on their table. So, we set up teleconferencing on each restaurant for 1 hour. Within 2 days, I covered 4 restaurants for all employees to streamline their unemployment benefits. And out of 84 employees, we had to let go of just about 72 employees to stay with 12 employees. And then I knew, the key was I knew if we shut down, we're not going to open up. This is just an experience I had in my other background, the rug business, that, once you close a business, you're not going to open. So I said, no matter what, we're going to be open. We have to go lean and mean. We got to have 3 employees in each location, and we're going to shorten the hours, shorten the menu, and in order to stay open. So that's what we did. Today, we have about 50 employees. So we got just about 38 employees back to work. And, we expanded the hours, not the same as original. We expanded our menu to what it was originally. And all together, we are 50% up. I can say this from March 23rd when we closed. However, we are 50% down exactly from this time last year. So with this in mind, nobody said we're going to get all green lights in life. So perhaps this pandemic is another lesson for us and for me. I wanted a business that, is bulletproof or recession proof. And here we are, Amelia's Taqueria, to me, it's recession proof. But when the pandemic happened, it was pretty much difficult to make a decision how we're gonna, what we're gonna end up with, how we're gonna go, and how we're gonna survive. But for us, it was just a matter of trying different things. I wanted to safeguard all the employees and the people who stop by at the restaurant for pickup and deliveries, because we had that pickup and delivery from 2013. So it wasn't a new engine to reinvent. So like many restaurants, they didn't have delivery services through companies like DoorDash, Grubhub, Uber Eats, but we had set that up from the get-go from 2013. Luckily, that was easy. So it was just a matter of securing the place. I decided that I'm gonna encase the restaurant with plexiglass. The kitchen had to be separate from the entire dining area. And this way, everybody would feel safe, the employees and the clients. And so that's what we did. And today, I don't say we are back to normal, but we are on our feet, and I'm looking at opening other locations. I feel that for any situation like this, any adverse situations, there are still opportunities. So I'm looking at locations, many restaurants or retail shops have closed. So I'm looking around to find good locations to open the fifth branch. So this is my experience with pandemic, and that's how we started Amelia's Taqueria.
Yeah. I mean, you bring up a good point that after all this, there are probably going to be some good deals around.
Exactly.
Unfortunately, restaurants will close, and I think, landlords maybe will accept less rent for once.
Well, my experience, the landlord haven't really changed the behavior yet, but it's going to happen. Unfortunately, this winter, probably we're going to see more restaurants that are closing, because the problem is that many restaurants that were surviving based on the patios during the summertime, they're not going to have that. The weather is getting cold, so pretty much everybody is going back to only takeout and delivery. I personally did not want to go with, setting up table at 6 feet social distancing, because I thought by having tables and clients, even as little number of people in the restaurant to sit, is going to make the employees and other people who come to pick up the food, they're going to feel uncomfortable. So I said, I'm not going to put any chairs and tables at all. We're just going to service simply through takeout and deliveries. And that becomes an issue for many restaurants now, that they cannot really have patios outside and serve. And, we're going to see, my prediction is, we're going to see at least, another 30-40% of the restaurants that are open now, they're going to be closed. Like in New York City, 60% of restaurants are already closed.
Wow.
So that number is going to go up till situation gets better.
Are there things that any of you guys have started doing as a result of the pandemic to pivot that you'll continue to do? Like, I've seen some people, selling cocktails to go, selling like pantry items, things like that.
A big item that
go ahead.
Now, a big item that you saw restaurants do were family meals, right? Especially when you were in takeout only. And I think you'll see a lot of concepts. And at Anthony's now, because we're in the pizza category, we do pizza bundles where you're feeding a family of 4 or a family of 5. So I think that's something that you'll see stick post, pandemic, post vaccinations. And then obviously this whole shift to off-premise business, whether it be, curbside, third-party delivery of your own food.
Yeah.
Kevin said it in his concept. He wasn't set up for that business pre-pandemic, and many restaurants were, and unless you had drive-throughs, unless you were quick service restaurants, if you were full service sit down, you weren't ready. But boy, did this pandemic accelerate any plans you had to do it, because literally overnight you became a takeout restaurant. So I think those are two of the big things that you'll see stick post-pandemic.
Yeah. Kev, anything you guys are gonna stick to?
Yeah, Kelly, we know that when we go back to normal, so to speak, we'll be able to resume our in-house service. We're going to be, one of the things that's happened is training has suffered, during all of this, because there's no extra dollars and no extra employees. But we are looking at our business, going back to our core values. I think that's what got us here, and we'll continue to do that. That's on the one hand. So we're comfortable with that. Patrick mentioned off-premise, and I don't know, when the pandemic started, we were about 6% of our total sales were takeout, as low as 2 or 3. We've gone as high as 34, 35%, which is not pretty because your entire organization is not built. You don't have enough phone lines at 5 o'clock. The public hasn't taken online ordering like we thought. It's usually only running about 10% of our orders coming in. We really thought that it would be a bigger piece. They want to get on the phone. They want to talk. It's just how they seem to operate. It's less cumbersome for them to, instead of having to scroll through. So some of the assumptions that we made are not necessarily proving true. However, I would tell you that we are taking a hard look at off-premise business in a couple different ways. One of which is branded products. Do we have an opportunity locally here in Massachusetts? A couple that come to mind. Legal Seafood's been out there for quite some time. I see Davio's product in the markets. There's a sausage guy I think I see from like Fenway Park that it's good to get your brand out there.
Yeah.
The problem with full service restaurants also have is that some of our menu items don't travel as well as say a pizza does, or Asian food perhaps stays hotter, it's denser, it's packed in a container. So we're still at the competitive disadvantage with our product line. So the focus for the organization, as I said earlier, is let's get through it and then let's learn from it, and let's not make some of the similar mistakes. And I think we all need to be careful thinking that the landlord's going to offer good deals. Kelly, I know you said that, but I've been doing this a long time, and the amount of landlords that I have encountered that offered really good deals, and I respect the fact that they have to make money, but we were in a period of time when landlords were making a lot of money, and restaurateurs, because there was so much cash on the sideline, were paying way too much, and our prime cost got way out of whack. And so we're looking at prime costs of 65, 66%. Cost of technology, cost of rent, cost of labor, all escalated, and there's just not enough left over. So everyone needs to be really careful to reevaluate your business model, and don't just go back to doing what you were always doing. Because I doubt that that's going to be the right thing to do.
You know, Kelly, I had one more, I forgot to mention one more thing, which has been very interesting coming out of this pandemic, where it's called virtual brands, right? And so restaurants are taking unutilized space in their kitchen and creating a brand separate from their core brand. So Burton's, It wouldn't be Burton's Grill, it'd be something totally different, but utilizing the equipment and food. And a best example of that, which the audience may be familiar with, is Chili's Grill and Bar. They've created this wing concept called It's Just Wings. And they basically, it's for third-party delivery or delivery only. And you can go on Uber Eats or DoorDash and you can see that concept, but it's really being made inside of Chili's and being delivered with a totally different packaging. So I think that is something that you'll see more and more of, and it's becoming very trendy to do.
Right. So they're essentially creating their own ghost kitchen.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Well, beyond that, Patrick, one of the things we have two brands. We have Red Heat Tavern and we have Burton's Grill. And, you know, I was not privy to it and found out today that a couple of guys are actually working together to try something out and sell each other's product in each other's restaurants. And I thought it was a great idea. I thought it was terrific.
Entrepreneurship.
It's not normal, but I'm all for it.
Right.
Very cool. Patrick, how many times have you been called the numbers guy?
Many times. I'm mostly called the what do I call it? The dream wrecker is what I'm called.
Oh, the dream wrecker. That's even worse.
Yeah.
So finance is one of those things I feel like, you know, a lot of people get into this idea. They're like, I have this awesome business idea, or I want to open a restaurant. You know, I have these family recipes I want to share with everybody, but they don't always understand the finance side of it. And, you know, how can people even just out of school that are walking into a very entry level position, how can they start to wrap their head around what it takes, how to understand the finances? If they don't have necessarily a finance background, maybe they have a management background, and maybe you could just walk us through kind of, your position and what your job entails.
Yeah, happy to. So as CFO, I oversee all of the accounting and finance functions for the company. Also treasury, tax planning, IT typically may fall under the CFO role. And, I look at my role as, in accounting and finance is two ways. Accounting is you're looking backwards, right? You're just looking at what happened, you're producing a financial statement, and there's really nothing you can do about that, right? It's done, it's in the past, as soon as you close those books. And then finance comes in, it's about looking forward. What can you learn from what's happened to improve your, hey, little cat, to improve the business moving forward. And, the restaurant business is, as Kevin said and others have mentioned, is, we're a pennies business. For every dollar that you take in, when you're done paying your vendors for your food and your people for labor and your occupancy and then, rents, if you got 10 to 15% left over, that's good. And then you have to pay your overhead, the staff that's supporting the organization. And then you have, interest if you're financing your company. So there's very, very little left over when you're done. I think what this pandemic has taught us is that we have to be prepared for the worst now moving forward. A lot of restaurants were not prepared. We could never have been prepared for what happened. Thankfully, the CARES Act gave companies money to survive. And now we're going to be heading into what's looked like a second wave with more shutdowns, and there's been talk of stimulus, so it'll be interesting to see what happens. But for the restaurant business, I would say if you're not a finance person or accounting person, but you're in operations, you really still need to understand your business from a financial perspective. Some of the best operators I've worked with are those that understand the financing as well as how to run an operation, how to run a dining room, how to run the restaurant. And it all comes from just asking questions. We in our company, we bring our managers through a profit and loss class. So we teach them, here's your sales, here's what your cost of your products are, here's your labor. And we go through that during their training so that when they hit their jobs inside the restaurants, that they have a better understanding of what they're managing. And we review those every month with them. So we'll go through the P&L after we close every month with the managers, and then hopefully do it very quickly so they can react to what's happened to improve their business moving forward. So, it's a great business to be in. You'll hear people say what a risky business it is, and it is. Speaking of landlords, for our business, one of the biggest mistakes we can make is picking a wrong location. Right? Forget about what rent you're paying. It's picking the wrong location. As you've seen, many restaurants closing, and our company has been involved with, exiting 6 locations that were underperforming. And as you go through that process, you realize the cost of exiting a bad location is much more than you could ever imagine, because you've signed up to be there a long time. And if it's not working because it's not a good location, it's a very expensive deal to get out of. So picking the right location is key. Surrounding yourself with, people of integrity, people of work ethic, people that love this business is important. And, just know that every penny that you can find inside the operation, while keeping your business true to its core values or, how you started it, multiplies out over time and over a number of locations and will save you money. So, yeah.
Yeah. One of the things that I learned, in my career becoming as a manager was that not everybody shares, P&L statements. Smaller businesses might be less inclined to do so, if they even do them at all. But I think as you work for larger companies, they understand the importance of sharing that information with their managers and the importance of having them know exactly what their food cost is that they're running, exactly what their labor cost is, what they're running, and, almost feel a little bit, take more ownership of it and feel a little competitive about it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly kind of how I have learned over time, is just asking questions. Ask all the questions, don't be afraid to ask dumb questions. And if they think that they can't, they don't want to give up that information, then they'll say, I can't tell you that,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. The general manager or the manager of the restaurant at the location is one of the most important people inside a restaurant company, because they have the ability to affect change at the location where, if you're working in an office, in an accounting office, you're not inside the restaurant. So the manager being, having the business acumen of the business itself is very important.
Right. And then I guess we have a couple questions here. So let's see, Simona, how did the 50% capacity and takeout affect your sales? Were the losses too big or surprisingly similar? How do you feel about a second wave financially? Nobody feels good about that. Anyone want to take those on?
I would just say, when the timing of this pandemic hit, our business, particularly in the Northeast, is very seasonal, right? So you open your restaurant, you put enough cash in the business to open it, and then you go through this cyclical process where it's busier in the summer because more people are eating out, you have patios, and then the winter comes and you're eating out less, and you're preserving cash in the good times, and then you're burning cash in the winter, and then you come out of March and you're hoping, okay, here comes the spring, here we go again. And that's when the pandemic hit, right? So that was the worst possible time for this industry, particularly in seasonal locations. And then the CARES Act really saved a lot of companies, and that was great. And but what we're seeing now is companies are now running out of that, and this second wave is going to hit without any help for restaurants. And we're bound by restrictions to either you can't open your bars, you can only sit 50%. Hey, listen, when you're 50%, the simple answer is when you're 50% capacity, you're doing 50% business. It's very hard to make that up. So the concern heading into the winter is that, now we're heading into that downtime with less capacity inside the restaurants and really no understanding if there'll be help for the companies to survive this winter.
Right.
Kelly, that's a great point. And one of the things I would just, also add to that is that a lot of it's about scale. If you're small, you may not have the financial resources to get through without some additional assistance. One of the things that we did, and I mentioned earlier that I had this 12-month target. I went to my CFO and I said, look, you need to put a model together that tells me whether I'm going to have money in April of next year. And included in that money is the bills I might have put off or the rent deferrals that I know are going to come due. So put the model together for me, update it every single month so that I know what kind of decisions I have to make in advance. And it's been a huge help because, the good news is if things worked well with a combination of summertime sales and CARES Act money, we've been banking money. And so we know we're going to start running in the red really from, fortunately, it wasn't in October, but we expect November through probably February. And we don't know about the winters up here. If you think about last year, we had this virtually snow-free winter. And
then it snows the day before Halloween this year.
Yeah, and it's just crazy. And 50% is 50%. And the good news is the takeout has taken up some of that in some of the locations, but we are not out of the woods, and we need to be very, very careful. And people need to get out there and support the smaller businesses that really do need the customers. And not saying that I don't want them or don't need them, but it's going to be a little bit of a challenge here. But we're going to get through it. And I was just having a conversation with my son tonight about. I said I expect in the springtime if you can look at it and say, if things go well, there's going to be a massive breakout. People are just going to be swarming at entertainment venues and sporting events and I don't know if there's movie theaters left, but restaurants. And it's like, hallelujah, just let me out of jail here and let me go spend some money and go sit at a bar and talk to somebody that you don't know. I mean, it's
strangers. Yeah. The pendulum's going to swing, right?
Yeah.
I would think. Yeah.
It'd be nice to
right.
back again.
Yeah. A couple more questions. Let's see. Have you had any specific instances where either customers or employees refused to follow protocol? If so, how did you deal with it?
And on my end, because I do, we have a lot of customers, we don't have a lot of problems. Employees, it's easy because you just tell them to leave the building if they don't do it. They get stressed in the summer months. They were hot and it was tough on them. You got to be sensitive. Go take a break. Customers, we haven't run into a lot, and we just, very carefully approach it because there are some people that look at it as a right, not as common sense.
This is true.
Yeah, same here. We've had no issues with either side. I think everybody's being careful, and guests understand they have to wear masks, and our employees understand, and everybody's been following the protocol.
Awesome. Cool. And then from Mary wants to know, how do you feel about the new restrictions where restaurants must close the kitchen at 9:30? Do you think this will hurt the industry more? Is there room for profit with new liabilities, for example, outdoor heaters, plexiglass, etc., while operating at half or 25%? Good question.
Real quick from my end, Kelly, I'm mostly a suburban restaurant, and they've been rolling up the sidewalks earlier and early every year. I think it's really difficult for the urban setting. They're basically saying, don't go out, don't have fun. And that'll have long-term impact, because if people start moving out of the cities, as we hear they're doing, it's going to take a long time for that to rebound. So they shouldn't unfairly blame restaurants and gathering points if done responsibly. At the same time, there has to be care taken by everyone. So.
Yeah, same here. We're mostly suburban, so we're unaffected by the times. But yeah, those restaurants in the city, particularly Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights, where people in the city like to go out later, for those restaurants that were already hurt, they're just getting hurt more.
Yeah.
I feel really bad for them.
Yeah, it's tough. I just don't really know what, the curfew does. If people are going to get together in larger groups, they're gonna do it, whether it's at 10 o'clock at night or 4 in the morning or 10 in the morning, they're gonna figure out a way.
Yeah, in some ways, limiting their ability to go out inside a restaurant forces them somewhere else, right? So they're gonna gather out in a private residence, which is where they're afraid some of these cases are coming from. So in some ways, it might be enabling what's happening.
You make a very good point.
Yeah.
Let's see. Anne wants to know, what advice do you have for students who are graduating this spring? I mean, the advice I would give would be, most of my friends everybody's feeling very grateful to have a job right now, those that do have a job. I think we've gone through, this big boom with restaurants, as I'm sure you've seen, there's so many seats and there were so many jobs and not enough people. And I think we really saw a labor crunch for a while that was really hard on everyone. So I'm wondering if maybe people will stay at jobs a little bit longer and just kind of sit tight for a bit, save some money, and just be grateful to have a job and be going to work. What do you guys think?
I think it'll come back. It might not be easy, and whereas for a lot of graduates over the last several years, there was choice and there were opportunities. Now you may have to work a little bit harder to get the position. And I think the thing that's unfortunate now, Kelly, is you can't go sell yourself, because really all hiring is done virtually. And, I'm old school, and I like nothing better than to shake someone's hand, look them in the eye and say, hey, let's talk about you and what your interests are. Yeah. So maybe if you can find a way to network and cut through those barriers would be my recommendation.
Yeah, network. It's harder to do in person, but, I had, a friend of mine's son call me about wanting to get into finance. And so, even if you have, your parents, friends, children, anywhere you can network is just so important. I learned it, from listening to professors at UMass, and it's really helped throughout my career. The more you can, get your name out, your brand, your personal brand out to others, the better it will be long term.
Amir, any last closing advice, comments?
Yeah, I'm just thinking of all these comments that everybody is giving. It's like a dull moment, but people have to find their own way. For us personally, the type of restaurant that I have, I personally like to help the employees that they like to get back to work. If you have a position, single mothers, people with, kids. We want to make sure that they have the job back and they can work. I try to give minimum of 20-30 hours per week to some employees. We even had gone up to 40-45 hours per week. So I want to make sure that everybody has a job. So we're giving less hours than before to individuals, but we're trying to have more people to be engaged and work. And I think it's going to be a challenging time for us as an employer, and challenging time for the employees. So it's not going to be easy for none of us. And I think creativity is the most important thing. To know what you are good at, what you really want to do. Probably, I would not recommend fresh out of college open up a restaurant, but maybe gain some experience in different fields. If it's a restaurant business, if it's anything else, just hopefully we're gonna pass this hurdle, and then things get back to normal. And that's what I think everybody's hoping.
Certainly. Awesome. Well, we are closing in on 7 o'clock. So thank you all very much. On behalf of the panelists, we'd like to thank all the students, faculty, staff, and alumni for joining us tonight. Hopefully you learned something new about the industry, and hopefully we'll do this again. Thank you, UMass Boston, for hosting us and giving us this wonderful opportunity.
Thank you so much.
Happy holidays.
Thank you, everybody.
Good luck to everyone.